Chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you know exactly how powerful a podcast can be. Whether it's for entertainment, personal growth, commute time, or your daily, maybe weekly workout in the gym, podcasts are the medium that millions of people use to get the content that they're looking for. And the question I get most often is, how do you create your podcast? If you haven't heard about Anchor, I'll tell you because a good friend told me. First of all, it's free. We always like to lead with the good stuff. The platform has all the tools you need to record and edit your podcast, all from your phone, tablet, or laptop. Anchor then goes to work for you by distributing your podcast episodes for you so it's able to be heard on all the top platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. Best of all, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's a one-stop shop to create your podcast and get your voice heard and your story told. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Representing East Oakland, man.
Welcome. Another episode of the Hawk Vision Podcast. I'm your host, Chuck Hawkins. Guys, wherever you're listening, however you're listening, you know we could be anywhere in the world, but you're here to rock with us, and I could not be more appreciative. Like, share, and subscribe across all of your social media platforms. We're trying to grow this thing. We got the countries. We got 80% of the states, but we want to continue to grow the viewership. So make sure that you send us messages. Make sure you know that we know what you like to listen to. We've had our top episodes. That is going to come out pretty soon of the year. Our recap, of course. And so we're really excited about the things that we have going on here at the podcast. Make sure you visit the apparel store, because I know it's hoodie season. It's cold. You want to be warm. Let everybody know that you're a visionary. All right. Now that that's out of the way, can you guys tell that that's not my favorite part to do? The guest that I have on today is someone that I have been rocking with on Twitter for years. And every time I do an episode in regards to relationships, you know, we've had Troy Spry, we've had Paul Bronson, we've had Kev Carr. Every time I do an episode about relationships, this guest and I end up going back and forth in messages. And so I brought on my good friend, Miss Maureen Simmons. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. What's good? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I figured, you know, like we said when we were talking, it was overdue. We have not had a female's voice on and when it comes to dating and when it comes to talking about the available dating pool. So I would not let the year end without making sure we got this episode done.
Absolutely. Thank you for letting us chime in.
Absolutely. So I want to dive right in, right? One of the things that we spoke about was the lack of the perceived, because I got to be politically correct, which I hate, the perceived lack of available men for single, successful women like yourself. Give me a little bit about your background and what made you say that.
Yeah. So my background, I work in corporate America currently. I've worked in the human resources field for, almost 20 years. Nice. I started out very young. It was one of my first quote unquote corporate gigs. I started out as a temporary employee and just on a maternity leave. And then that ballooned into, working my way up the chain, the food ladder, all the way up to executive management, which is what I do now. But in the interim of that and on that pathway, I've also dibbled and dabbled in politics, as you know.
Yes.
I was just recently involved in California in Proposition 16. I actually started that movement/campaign and also worked on that campaign. And then I also wrote California's reparations bill. So
Let's go.
And have worked in the California State Assembly. So I think that, what I do politically and what I do professionally are definitely hand in hand.
Yes.
But I want to tell you, working on this last campaign, I got to see the numbers of what we're dealing with. So we're talking about available pool. I have a perspective about that now that I understand the numbers and what that pool really looks like,
Yes,
as
yes.
opposed to what we think it looks like.
So you got to look at some of the census data, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Fill out the census. It's here for us. It's your friend. You got to fill out this, look at the census, and now you tell me what you found there.
Yeah. So being first, let me say this.
Yes.
I'm one of those sisters that considers herself to be, quote unquote, high value. I'm going to use the buzzwords because those of us that, are really out here in these streets, that's what we use.
The single streets.
These single streets, right? We like to differentiate ourselves by, values. And so if we're going to, for my high value sisters out there, that's those of us that feel that, we got the degrees and, we're making a little six figures. We're driving the Benz or the BMW. That's me. I would be that chick. And single is all get out, but I got the clothes. I got the money. I have all of that. I got the fly condo. All of that.
It. Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
True visionary style,
I have all of that.
Yes.
But I worked on this campaign, and it's so weird because, I'm working on this campaign, and I started looking at the numbers, and I was thinking to myself, just the last couple of years, I finally felt like I'm ready to meet somebody because I felt like, okay, I've done all this work on myself. I follow all the same relationship gurus that everybody else does. And so I'm like, I've done the work.
Yes.
I'm ready now. I bring some things to the table. And I started wondering why I'm in the dating pool and I'm not meeting the type of men I want to meet. And I'm like, what is this?
Right. What's happening?
What is this? And so I worked on this campaign, Jeff, and I saw the numbers and I said, this makes sense. And then I looked, so let me put what I mean in perspective.
Yes.
California has about roughly 39 million people in California.
Right.
I am African American. I want an African American man.
Absolutely.
There is only roughly 5% of the population in California is African American. 27% of that 5% are incarcerated.
Okay.
So that means now that available pool that I'm looking at is not really even 5%, because 5% is male and female.
Right.
And now you subtract those that are married, you subtract those that are in the eligible pool of ages and wages, and those numbers started to get almost next to nothing. And then the eligible men who would want me. And I saw that I was like, there was just two people.
There was two people left out of the 39 million. Okay. And you probably knew one of them already, right? That's like,
right.
That's
I mean, so and I said, wow. And okay, so it wasn't two, but it was a small amount. And I thought to myself, this is what happens to Black women all too often, is that we're very unrealistic about the pool that we are really dealing with, especially if we live in cities. I live in the Bay Area.
Yep.
And so if you live in a city where there is not a large population of Black men to begin with, and then you have your long scroll of requirements that you have that scroll of requirements, and then you wonder why you're in singlehood, for some of us, year after year after year after year. Reality set in this past November.
So
right, for me.
I have two trains of thoughts on this. One is that, and unfortunately for myself, I'm not in the single streets. So shout out to my wife. But I cautiously say this: the older women get, it appears to me, the older women get, the longer the list gets of what the person has to have to quote unquote be, even considered to be on the list in terms of eligible and part of what you want in terms of, what you're looking for. Then my older self looks at it as says, well, the list is the reason that you're single, right? And I say that because when it works, right? When it goes the way that the fairy tale goes, you meet in your 20s and, throughout your 20s you date or whatever the case is, you get married. The list isn't that long because you're just young and in love. And as my father used to say, you don't have nothing to lose yet. And so why do you think, or do you agree with, the older you get, the longer the list is until you reach that inflection point where the list becomes, okay, he don't really have to be 6'3". He can be 5'10", He don't really have to make six figures. He can be real good, 85,000 and great credit. Like, when do we start to reevaluate the list in terms of it going from a checkbox to something that we're now targeting people, right? Like, how do we address the list?
Yeah, and so that's a really great question, and I say that there are two ways that I approach this. So I approach it so here's one way that I've looked at it. Of course, I will first say I am over 40. So yes. I've had that period of my life where I didn't have a list at all. And as you say, it was when I was younger. Yeah. And even though, I was younger and I still had the fly lifestyle because I'm just a hustler like that. But
only reason you're on the show. No.
I'm a hustler. I've been a hustler for a while.
Absolutely.
So that's who I've been. But in that, I was a lot more flexible in who he was. Okay. But now let me say this. I was the type of sister that, I was 21 and I still lived in the gated community, drove a fly car. I don't know. I have always been that woman.
Yeah.
But I would try to fit the man into the lifestyle. Like, as long as he was, qualified as male and I physically liked you, I didn't really care what else you brought to the table. I figured we're building this thing together.
Right.
And what I found in those years when I wanted to be married is that I got men who were not mentally ready for the lifestyle and the hustle that I had, because my picker was off. I didn't know how to pick. I picked based on physicality, and we're just having fun because remember, I'm only 20. I'm in my 20s too.
Right.
So I'm not all that mature. I have the financial stuff was easy to me. That was math. I've always been good with money. That was just math to me. And so as I got older, when you're talking about this list, what happened is the more I added to myself, I expected more of the other person. Mm-hmm. So the more I was able to look at myself and say, okay, well, I'm physically fit, I'm financially fit, emotionally fit, spiritually fit. I expected more because I used my previous relationships as a barometer to say that I've tried that and it didn't work out. I've tried having the relationship where I was the one with the financial solvency and I had more coins than him.
Right.
And that didn't work because then I got used, right? Because he saw me as a come up.
Right.
I went through that. Yeah, I'm going to be totally transparent. I was the sister, even though most men physically would look at me and think I was the kept woman, I was flying dudes out, right? I was the one flying people out and taking them on trips and buying the limos because I was that woman that bought into the idea that I'm independent and money don't make me and I don't really care.
Right.
But I didn't realize men aren't made like that. So yes. Now when we talk about the list, my list is not so much about because I believe I'm so great, although I do, but it's not because I believe I'm so great. It's because I understand I'm wiser now and I know just what works. I know that men aren't wired for me to bring home the bacon, fry it up, and him just to be a part of it. He wants to produce.
Yes.
So now that's what that list is about. My list is saying I can't put a man in that position, right? I got stocks and bonds. I got money coming everywhere and property. I'm investing. I'm doing all this stuff.
You're in the top percent.
He's supposed to just sit here and be a part of that. That was my thinking at one point.
Yeah.
That was my thinking. And then for me, it was even the other caveat is that people can't see me on your podcast, but you can vouch.
Absolutely.
Most people would not think that I am the age that I am. So I pull younger men all the time. They always think I'm in my late 20s.
Absolutely.
I'm not. I'm not.
Yes. You
But
definitely got a pass there.
Yeah. I get that demographic of men, and plus my energy is like that. And so my list now is more realistic about, hey, I got to keep myself in check. So it's not to check him out. Mm-hmm. It's to keep myself balanced. Now, I know other people, that's not the purpose of their list, but we're talking about me.
Absolutely.
So I do have to have the list, because I have to recognize that, you know what, trying to have someone come in and not acknowledge that I do come with some stuff.
Right.
I don't want to put him in that position, because I'm setting us up for failure.
How important do you think it is to communicate the items that are on that list fairly early on? And when I say fairly, ladies, if you're listening to this, please do not think I'm talking first, second, or third date, because that is the fastest way to run a man off. No man wants to have a conversation about credit and real estate on date number 2. That's not what's happening. But to that point, how early on do you think that it is feasible to have that conversation about what you're looking for?
Okay, well, I'm unconventional. I have those conversations very early on. I would say in the first several dates. Maybe not the first date, because typically those dates are kind of, you know, who are you,
right,
and where you come from, and what you know, those, why you single, like those first couple of dates are typically reserved for that. You
Correct.
know, when you're married, you have children. But I say that I have learned to broach those conversations a lot sooner. It's just that you have to do it with finesse. Right? I've learned how to ask those questions as hypotheticals to get them talking, because my background is in human resources.
Yes.
And I use that to my advantage. I use that and I say, you know, I'm just if I feel that I'm interviewing you, I apologize. I just want to get to know you. And I definitely turn on the charm. And then I start asking them hypotheticals that for me are actually things I want to know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good skill to use.
I do it early. I ask men, you know, maybe on the third date, you know, things that most women would not ask for or ever ask. I ask about their temperament and ways to get them to tell me who they are without asking them directly. I'll give them hypothetical situations. I create problems that I need them to solve so that I can see what their character is like.
Real quick, that never goes away throughout the life of a relationship. I think women tend to create problems that in their head.
We're not going to.
That's a live action question that never goes away. Scenarios in your own mind. But go ahead, keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, but so I tell, and I tend to be that woman that, that other women come to for advice. And I think most women are that, most of us kind of talk to each other and coach each other along. And so I think that it's important when we're asking, like, when, I think that that's where you have to, as a woman on this dating scene, you have to use your wisdom. You have to begin to understand, like, what's important to you. And you've got to become a better discerner of character in the men that you are dating so that you can discern some things without asking.
Yeah.
Right? Because some things you will know by how he responds to you in the conversation that will tell you a lot that you need to know. Now, I granted younger women have, to develop that skill set. I think when you get to a certain age, you've seen a lot, so that comes easier. So for me, I don't have a lot of time to waste. So I'm going to start asking you real tough questions. Yeah. Earlier on, because if you are not at a point where you can answer and have those tough conversations and open yourself up to that, then we're both wasting our time. Absolutely. And I think that's just part of me understanding that this is either going to work or it's not. I can make this work in 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years.
Yeah.
We're going to get the same outcome.
No, I think that's fair. I think that there's definitely a train of thought where Once you cross over the other side of 38, 39, 40, there's less time to waste. And then so it becomes a question of, are you dating for potential or are you dating for a potential match? Right. And so I think those are two different things that we don't do a good enough job of delineating the differences between, where we say, oh, but this guy still has a dream, or, but he's not producing just yet. And so for younger women, I've had this question come along Chuck, why don't you teach more men how to date? Why don't you teach more men how to treat their wives, or whatever the case is? Because that's not my job, right? Men are strange characters in that we don't want advice until we need it, right? It's part ego, it's part production. And so when people ask me why I don't teach more, because I can only teach what works for me. And on the outside looking in, a lot of those things would seem to work for everyone. But you can't go to a man and say, you have to be ready to talk about your finances. You have to be ready to listen to her day and know if you're listening to solve or if you're listening to listen. And so my question would be, in regards to the conversation that you're having on date 3, 4, or 5, what are the red flags that you identify that some people tend to overlook?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I want to say, I want to answer that question. Let me stick a pin in that. But I want to say something to women, as we're talking about why don't men teach other men? Yeah. I think as women, what we have to begin to realize is what our purpose is in relationships. What is it that you're looking for in relationship, right? Because when you do all of this work on yourself, the assumption is that your counterpart is doing the same thing. Yeah. And so we have to recognize that the more you do, all of this, quote unquote work, that's what we call it, work. I'm working on myself. I've Correct. Done all this. You're still a flawed person. And I think we begin to puff ourselves up as women to such and this isn't to bash my sisters. I'm in that camp too. Yeah. I feel that, I've done all this work on myself. And so now I have outpaced men. Yeah, right? I've outpaced them. And so now when I turn around, we already mature quicker. But now that I've done all this self-work, it's like, whoa, where are the men? And so I don't get angry at men. What it has caused me to do as a woman is to reevaluate what I believe the man's purpose is and what my purpose is with him. What am I looking for? Am I looking for someone to come in and rescue me? Am I looking for someone to come in and, put me up in the nice home, and take me on trips? Am I looking for companionship? Like, you have to get down to what you're looking for and recognize that no matter how much work you've done on yourself, you're still imperfect. So we can't look at men through this lens of imperfection and get angry because they don't fit that stereotypical male that we have thought would be there when we fixed ourselves. Right. So what do I look for in terms of a man when I'm listening? What are the red flags? One of the red flags that I think that women overlook all too often, especially in this age of social media, is his communication skills, right? And what I mean by that is how much time and to what level and what depth is he taking to get to know you? When you're talking to him, what types of things is he sharing with you? What is he telling you about himself? And are you listening to that? Are you having a conversation and are you in the moment? Do you hear what the brother is saying to you? Right. Is he fixated on his career? That tells you something about him. Is he fixated on dating and on women and on what you look like? That tells you something about him, right? Yes. Is he where is his conversation? What depth? How open is he? How available is he? How frequently does he contact you? That's something I think most women overlook, is the frequency and the consistency. We overlook it until it's too late. And we've wasted too much time. And then we go back and we start saying, in the beginning, he wasn't really consistent, but I just thought it was the getting to know me phase. So I just gave him a pass. No, don't give a pass ever. No passes.
No passes ever.
There's no passes ever. I look at it this way. From day one that there is an introduction, women, you start collecting information, and men, you do the same thing. You start collecting information. They are on right then and there.
Yeah.
There's no passes. And everything that happens when you have that red flag pop up, don't ignore it. You have to assess it and say, okay, is this a deal breaker for me? Is this a deal breaker? And if it's a deal breaker, walk away. Walk away.
So what happens to the train of thought in that vein, right? So if I'm listening to what you're saying and we start to discuss our non-negotiables up front and we are aware of them and they are a deal breaker, when do we get a chance to build and see how strong we are, right? Because this social media is, from what I've seen, there's of course we got the cancel culture, and the first red flag I see, I'm deleting and yada yada yada, right? So what happens with this limited talent pool? Since we both have the HR background, we have this limited talent pool, how often or how quick is there a detrimental benefit to canceling people for the first red flag? Right? Like there's not 100 people lined up, so to speak, right? And we're both Bay Area, we're both over 40 and all that case. I consider myself to be a unicorn and I'm okay with it, right? Black, great money, great job, family, yada yada yada. But I know that I wasn't always this person. And so to your point, there were things that my wife did that taught me how to treat her. Now, my dad did a great job of telling me that you always be a consistent student of your wife or your girlfriend, because she's always going to change. But what happens when we cross people off the list too quick?
Well, and that's the thing, and I guess I should qualify what red flags are. And they're going to be different for everybody because everyone's makeup and what they can tolerate is different. And so for me, a red flag is not going to be something that I deem to be, okay, that's simple. A red flag will be something where I deem you to be abusive in your communication. Have you yelled?
Okay.
Are you cursing me out? Like, it has to be egregious for me.
Okay.
Personally, that red flag has to be where anybody in their right mind is going to walk away. I give a lot of grace for things that I consider to be, we're all growing. And so if I can discern that, this man, he's growing like I'm growing. I don't cut people off for being human. I cut people off for bringing damage. If I believe you're going to damage me, you're damaged,
Gotcha.
You're not healed. And let me, and that's what I mean. Women, we see those sorts of things. Let me say this, and this should not be happening to any woman that is, at this point, 30s or 40s at all. But sisters are still doing this. We've got to stop giving so much of ourselves to people who are not committed to us. And I can't even believe that as women, we still have to say that.
Yeah.
We still have to say, so those are the kinds of red flags. He wants more of you than he's willing to give to you. He's, that You're giving your body, your soul, your spirit, you're cooking, you're cleaning, you're giving wife duties, you're doing all of this. To me, those are red flags, because a man who is looking for something of substance, he won't let you expend yourself like that without him showing his hand, because he's like, I'm looking too. I'm looking too. I'm qualifying you. This isn't just about what I'm getting. Women always say they want that Russell Wilson, Sierra got the Russell. We want to do the Sierra prayer.
Yeah, yes.
But at the same time, it wasn't so much about what Sierra did. It's about what Russell did, because I hear him on the interviews talking about how he pursued her.
Right.
So we focused on what Sierra was doing, but many of us need to be able to qualify what's the Russell's doing. What is he doing? What's he bringing? What's his pursuit look like? Right. And again, this isn't to cut people off because they are throwaway. We've got to stop that. I'm not advocating canceling people. I'm not advocating for women to perpetuate this ideology that we're too good for anybody.
Yes.
No, I don't advocate for that. I have 3 brothers whom I love. I have a lot of male friends. I love men. I love my brothers.
Yes.
I do. But I recognize there's only one man that's going to be right for me. And so as I'm going through this pool, I say I end it sooner rather than later as a preservation mode, right? For me,
Okay.
I'm coming from the standpoint of there is a woman out here better suited for you and I'm not her. And I want you to meet her. And I always want to leave the man in a better position than I met him at. So hopefully I've planted some seeds in him. Hopefully, even if it's a week or two, I have been enough of a woman, a sister, a friend, even if no matter the duration of time, that I'm able to assess, is this something that can progress? And the sooner I'm able to make that determination, I think it's better for all. Again, I'm not saying this is coming from a place of I'm too good for you.
Sure.
You don't have enough.
Yeah.
None of those things. Because believe me, I give a lot of grace. And, some of the people I do, because I recognize, again, I'm looking at who you are. And I don't want to pass up someone who could potentially be a great partner.
Right.
So I don't look at things from a superficial standpoint. I do have some prerequisites, right? You should.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think there's a lot of self-awareness in what you're saying that I don't know if the average, and I use that term loosely, the average female that is interested in dating and complaining to her girlfriends about dating, there's a lot of self-awareness that you have that they don't seem to want to address. Right? In terms of temperament, in terms of patience, in terms of what you really have going on outside of, how you look in that dress or those leggings, because leggings tend to benefit a lot of people. But I think that there's a level of self-awareness that you have that does not penetrate to the average thought process. And so right before we jumped on, we were talking about this clip that's gone viral, right?
Yes.
And in this clip, I don't know the guy's name, but it was sent to me. It had to be at least 10 different times, where the gentleman, a woman calls into, I guess, a radio show or a podcast or something to that effect. And the guy just basically is like, yeah, there's no hope for you. You're over 40. You got kids. You got a baby daddy. You got and he lights into her and tells her that she's not qualified for the type of man that she's looking for. And we may be on the same train of thought as this, but I thought that the delivery was probably the worst that I've ever seen of anybody with a platform being a black man trying to educate or help black women in the dating process. But what he was saying was absolutely, I won't say absolutely, it was very, very on par with a reality check.
Yeah. So I too just saw that clip.
Okay.
And I don't remember how I saw it. I'm sure because, I know how I saw it. Instagram pushed it up there because it was viral. And so I saw the clip on Instagram a few days ago. And I went and tried to, put it into context, like, whoa. And then I watched a few more videos of this gentleman on YouTube. And I have to say that after I watched some of the other videos, I understood that his delivery was definitely something I think it could have been delivered in a different way.
Absolutely.
However,
hope she don't have no brothers, to live close the way he was doing his delivery. You know what I mean?
However, as a black woman, when I listen to, at this point, I think I listened to maybe 3 or 4 videos. His videos can run for several hours, and women call into this platform all the time. Okay. And I heard some things that are that touch on what we were just talking about in terms of women and their list and what's realistic and not realistic. And I listened to him and I said, you know what? I think as women, we don't like how he's saying it, but there was so much truth in what he said, because I think that we have this infinite pool of men who will fit everything on our list, so much so that we can continue to cancel indiscriminately
Right.
based on this least little flaw when we're flawed is a problem. This idea that, and he was talking, and I was looking at the young woman, and I have no judgment about where she's situated on the 1 to 10 scale, not my business.
Sure.
But I put myself in that position, and Chuck, I remember being, maybe about her age, and this was my way of living. Like, a man could not take me to any restaurant that had a commercial.
Listen, I teach my daughters that right now. To be completely honest, all 4 of my daughters are so unimpressed with anything that has a commercial or a hibachi grill. Like, they're over it. Like, that's not...
Never been.
It's not going to work. Exactly, yeah.
Never been. And, and along those lines, like, I had a lot of these really, and I still think those are things that are important. I say I'd rather you take me on a picnic that is totally creative than to take me somewhere that has a commercial. Like, think a little bit. But,
yes.
But, as this sister was talking about, what she wanted, I thought to myself, here's where I agree with him. Listen, sisters, there's only, yes, there's more of us that earn 6 figures than there are men that earn 6 figures. That's been stated. That's proven. It's that the data
absolutely
shows it.
Yes.
CDC.com has been saying it. CDC.gov. They've been saying that. We've been knowing that, right? And as I said, I just wrote California's reparations bill. So when we look historically at how we as African Americans in this country, how we have gotten to where we are, we know what our history is. And so it's unrealistic, especially for sisters, when we're wanting to deal with a Black man. We think that there's this large pool of 6-figure brothers who are 6 feet tall with abs, like, sis.
Right. Like they're just hiding out, like waiting to be discovered.
Sis, and so that is where I agreed with, the more I listened to him. And then when I listened to, he would question the women about where they are, I thought, wow, that's when it got real sobering, right? Because he flipped it back on the women and said, what are you bringing to this situation? What does the man get from you? Right. Like, you want that kind of man, but what's your dress size? And women were getting heated about that. They were mad about you ask me my dress size and how much I weigh. That's superficial. And I said, wow,
it's a thing.
Those are the kind of conversations that I'm glad you're having with your daughters. But so many of us who did not have fathers and didn't have uncles and men to teach that, we have gone out into the world without being very sober about what we're bringing to the table. It's fantastic. I believe women should treat themselves like the queens that they are, the prize, but make sure that is reality. Don't pretend. You shouldn't need a man to validate that portion of you. You should be able to look into the mirror honestly. And too many of us are not honest about the reflection that's in the mirror. We're not honest.
Yeah. I will say that. I think that a lot of women, coming from the male side, right? I've been married over 15 years now, and I think that I've come across every type of question that I can get from coworkers, single coworkers. Chuck, how do you do this? Chuck, you do that for your wife, and and I get all those questions, and then it never fails. These men don't know how to act right. Well, what are you doing? Because the things that move me to provide and do for my wife don't move every other man. Like there's this belief that because I am cute and because not me, but the woman, because I'm cute, because I'm thick, and because I have my money, this man should be satisfied. Well, if you can't have a conversation about anything but Real Housewives, a man that makes 6 figures is not going to be interested in anything you could do outside of being cute and thick. Right. Like, and so I loved I love the content. I hated the delivery. And so to your point, you said that, women have to unpack what does the man get? And I don't think enough women have that question answered in detail the same way they have that list that we spoke about earlier, Mo. The same way they have that list is detailed, right? It has sections, subsections. It has clauses, right? If he don't have six figures, but he has great credit, maybe we could do 85. If he's not 6 feet and have abs, maybe he could be 5'10" and just be slim. Like, we have all those clauses and escape hatches, but when it's what do you bring to the table besides the fact that you're cute and thick? Like, what else are you doing?
Yeah, and those are the things, and that's why, when you touched on and you said, women have these social circles that affirm the wrong things in each other. I mean, I think that's part of my problem with some of the other dating platforms that are out here that are, now because we have social media, everybody can be a dating coach and I mean, I'm a dating coach, but I don't try to market myself like that because
right.
I think that we have monetized. And so I speak to people all the time on the regular,
yes.
right? I don't monetize myself in the social media sphere as that because I think that then you are driven by how much you're producing. You're now willing, you're saying what you're saying because you have an audience. And so that's what I liked about that platform. And I will say that for many women, we have to be around people that will be honest with us. And I'm not saying honest and tearing you down because I think that, a lot of us have gone through family traumas. We have a lot of things that we have to work on and be healed from. So I'm not advocating that you go around people who are going to further damage you. But I am saying that, you have to be at least realistic enough to recognize, like, am I really all that? Don't fake it. Like you said, don't pretend that all you bring to the table is, a thin waist and thick hips and all this superficial stuff. But on the inside, you're broken. You have no idea how to build up another man. You pointed out that your wife was able to bring some things to the table that helped you in your character development. Yep. And so as women, what else are you bringing to the table? And be honest about that. Just because you listen to, some of the relationship gurus on YouTube or Instagram who, have large followings and, and they tell you that all the men are wrong and that he didn't appreciate you and you listen to that. And so now you start feeling real gravy. Listen, that man has a following of 1 million women and most of you are single. Most of you are single. You will never have him. He's taken. Mm-hmm. And you are now having a surrogate relationship with this man who's married because you don't have a real relationship in the world because you believe all the men are trash.
Right.
Stop it. And so we have to be discerning about the information that we're listening to and balance that stuff out. Maybe the men you're choosing are trash because you're making trash decisions. It's okay. Acknowledge it, grow from it, figure out what you need to do. Do you need therapy? Sometimes you need therapy, not a coach. A dating coach, a relationship coach is not a therapist. And I fear that many people, many Black women are using dating coaches, whether it is Instagram, YouTube, or some of these men are being paid by the hour, hundreds of dollars, when these women need therapy from a licensed clinical therapist. Because you have mama and daddy trauma, there's sexual abuse that has happened, emotional, mental. Get the real healing that you need so that you make better decisions, because all of it is not on the man. All men are not wrong and all women are not right, and vice versa, right? And I think the reason we're having such difficult times in relationships is because you're coming to it messed up to begin with. Women, and I say this as a natural sister, so I know a lot of women, again, you can't see who's talking, but, we have to stop putting eyelashes and, a full beat on masking the ugliness inside of us. You're going to put on eyelashes and a full lace wig and beat and a waist trainer, but you have not done the inner work. And I'm not talking about with a dating coach. I mean, do you need to seek clinical therapy? If you do, seek it. So that then your eyes are healed and you go out into the world healed, and you're not canceling people, but what you are doing is you're able to move through life and say, this isn't a good situation for me for a number of reasons, none of which has anything to do with him being a bad person.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. You have to know your triggers, right? And I think that kind of goes back to what you're saying is a lot of people will look at dating coaches as therapy and look at therapy as dating coaches and you have to be able to isolate those two things. Like I am you've seen Ayanla, right? The Fix My Life
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
So I have this running joke with anybody that brings her up is that I haven't seen her fix anything yet. I have
At
seen
all.
her identify and I have seen her agitate. I haven't seen her fix anything yet. But people will watch the show and then come away with some fake enlightenment like they are now in a place where they understand. And my thing is, no, you don't understand because that's that person's issue. That was their story. That's what they have to go back and work on. Just because it may have uncovered a layer of the onion for you does not mean that this is your struggle and that you now know everything you need to know to be a whole person and go off into the dating world. And so to that, I wholeheartedly agree that we have to be able to separate dating coaches from therapy because like you said, you could put lipstick on a pig. At the end of the day, that pig is still going to be a pig, right? And it's going to snort when it's hollered. So I totally agree. It's,
You calling us pigs?
no, oh Jesus, no, Lord, don't even start. I'm about to stop recording, delete now.
No.
But I do say,
that is important though, and so I get what you're saying, and I say that,
Yeah.
I say that wholeheartedly, and I say that with as much compassion and empathy as possible. But we have to, thankfully, there, and I love it. I listen to some of the videos, but
Sure.
I also know that they don't take the place of me identifying the real issues within myself so that I can address those, right? And so that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you can't afford therapy, to pay for it, I get that,
Absolutely.
But I do still say that, don't see, and speaking as somebody who has a coaching business, I am careful how I coach people. And
Yeah.
again, I don't monetize it or advertise it in the way that I thought I would, because I recognize people are really looking for help, and I don't want to be another person using that platform for money. Like I
Yeah.
do well financially outside of that. I don't need to pump up
Listen.
a coaching business and try to get more money. We can always use more money.
We
but
can
I
always
have
use
other-
more money, but listen,
I got other streams of income. I've got other streams of income.
We've been
So-
going back and forth for a while in terms of, on Twitter with we talk about everything. We talk about our money. We talk about different topics, all that good stuff. So yeah, money's good. I think that it is inherently dangerous to not understand the definitions of being entertained versus being enlightened. And I say that because while we're on this topic of we may need a dating coach, we may need therapy, what I've noticed is that the market for dating entertainment is absolutely huge, and where you spend your time is typically where you get your results, right? And so when you spend your time watching these shows that don't help the relationship space, when you spend your time watching these women that are quick to go off and they pop off any, it's designed in a manner to destroy the happiness that you're seeking. And even when I had Paul Bronson on, who has hosted some of these shows overseas, he's like, no, it's literally designed to be chaotic, and so you have to spend time watching or studying the opposite. And so my question would be, what is it that you would suggest women do if they are just now, let's say they're listening to this podcast and they're saying, you know what, I do have some work to do on myself before I decide to entertain any other man, even if it's the one that comes back from 7 years ago and we ended on good terms. There's some things that I have to do. What's the first step you would say that they need to do to start the process of being ready to date?
Yeah. So So beyond acknowledging that there is some things to do, I think that's the first step. And that's a huge step, just acknowledging that I have some work to do, or
Yeah.
there's some things I need to do. And whether that's with, again, a clinical therapist, for some people, it might be a spiritual counselor that is somebody that, that they feel that they can trust, and they would prefer to have spiritual counseling. I think that has its place and its value for some people. So in however that form is for you, whether it's clinical and you're actually paying a clinical psychologist, or it's spiritual counseling, make that determination from a perspective of wisdom and acknowledging that you do need to have that. And do your research on people. Don't go to this, one person and that's your thing. It might take research. It might take looking, doing some searches, asking questions, interview that person to ask what kind of help they can give you, or resources, get referrals. So it's going to take some concerted effort, is my point. Yeah. The other thing that I would say to someone who's thinking about dating, I don't advocate for dating coaches. Again, as somebody who coaches people on relationships, I don't advocate, because here's what I believe. So many of us desire marriage, and so you go to a dating coach that helps you to date, but they're not teaching you the skills for marriage.
Yes.
And those are two different skill sets. Two different skill sets. And so many coaches that are out there are in their mid-30s. Most of them that are popular in America, most of them, not all, are in that mid-20s to mid-30s range, give or take on either side. Some of them are married, right?
Yep.
But I say that they teach from a position of what makes you a good dater. They're not teaching you from a position of what makes you a great wife, and that's different.
Yeah. I could not agree more. I don't want to interrupt but because I totally agree. I don't think delineation of definition, right? Where we go to these dating coaches seeking relationship and marriage advice, and all they're telling you what they're good at. They're good at teaching you how to date, how to get to the second date, how to get to the third date. But once that transition kicks in, where we have to take ownership, responsibility, patience, where all those other things kick in to nurture a relationship, they're no longer qualified to teach.
No, in my opinion, based on what I have consumed myself, based on what I understand marriage to mean from people that I haven't engaged with who are married, and you're married, so know a lot of what's being taught is coming from a great place. I'm not saying that anyone's being disingenuous, but it is not getting you any closer, women, to being a wife at all. Yeah. It's not. As a matter of fact, I believe that overconsumption of a lot of this dating advice is the reason that you're single, because you're being taught how to date. And the reason that you're not having success in getting that dating relationship to manifest into marriage is because there's a skill set that you don't have.
Yeah.
Because you focused on dating for the last year, too.
Absolutely. And I think even in the titles themselves, they show you which one that society would have you focus on, right? Because you get coached up to date, but you got to get counseled to get married, right? There's marriage counselors, but there's dating coaches. And we've been taught, throughout our adolescent lives that when you go see the counselor, something's wrong. And when you go see the counselor, there's things that you need to improve on. But when you get coached up, it doesn't matter how good you are, because that's why you have a coach. And I think that we need to look at even the titles in terms of where we seek assistance from in relationships. What do you say to the difference between the two, a marriage counselor and a dating coach?
Yeah, I do. And I agree. And I think that again, that's part of the marketing. And so we have to be very careful. And as we continue to progress, and now that these things are so accessible, you have to be a wise very wise about the choices that you're making. And so that's what I'm concerned with as we continue, especially in the Black community. We continue to damage one another because we're setting ourselves out on a path where we are not engaging with one another from a proper context. And so we have a lot of women who are overcoached, and so that's why they come to you and they say, Chuck, why aren't you coaching the men? Because a lot of women are having an overconsumption of these dating coaches. And so now they have all of the 5 points and the 7 points, and they can recognize grown boys and grown men and all of these catchphrases because they've been sitting at the feet of these dating coaches who have wives, right? Yep. You're single, he got a wife. And now you go out into the dating pool with, all of this information, but you don't know how to get what he has, which is you want to be someone's wife. Right. So, and so I think that we have to be careful. So I as a single, these are things that I implement in my own life. Right. And again, I say that with the caveat that I can do both. I can coach people. I'm not a licensed counselor. So I don't, even pretend to have that skill set at all, because I take that seriously. And so I think there is a place, let's talk about when you would use a coach. You would use a coach when you have, for the most part, things together, like you get it. Maybe you've been out of dating for a while. Maybe you're coming out of a relationship. Maybe, you were married for a long time and you're wanting to get back out. Dating pool is different. Right. So those are where you can say, okay, I'm using a coach. I think you use a counselor when there are obviously, you have a trend of relationships that have not worked out, right? Yeah. You've had a long list of relationships where consistently you've been in and out of short-term relationships. As you can look back and say, man, I don't have a history of relationships. I keep choosing the wrong people. I've gone through some maybe violence in relationship, whether it's in a family situation or dating. Those are things that I would say, don't use a coach, but use a licensed counselor therapist. Because those are traumas that most coaches don't have the skill set to help you through. So know the difference. Again, I'm not saying don't listen. A lot of them give you some great advice, but they are also monetizing their services. And so if you notice that you are listening to XYZ coach on Instagram for 2 years and you're still single, that's when I would say, now, wait a minute, because you've been listening to so-and-so for several years. They done got married, have babies. You're watching their kids grow up, and you still listen to them. And so this is when I would say, if you've been listening to them for longer than 12 months and that hasn't panned out for you yet, that's when you have to say, full stop. I've listened to all your videos. I never, I catch your lives. I've asked you questions in your comments. So now I need something else. And that may not be counseling or therapy. That may be some other practical things. But, that's when you have to take a deeper assessment. That's
I'm going to say it. Ayanla ain't fixed nothing. Stop watching her. But you do get...
I've heard that Ayanla's show is being canceled. Like that this is the last season. So
listen...
That might be coming true.
I'm not supposed to take joy in anything, but I just, myself, I am a person that I do not like chaos at all. I don't like conflict and personally, because I know what it brings out of me, right? So I don't like chaos and conflict around me because I know the person that I am if I have to shift into that mode. And so I try to keep as much peace around me as possible. And so when, my wife sometimes will flip through TV and she'll watch Ayanla or she'll watch, our other one that I do kind of like is Ready for Love or whatever, but she'll flip through these shows and it never fails that I've never watched Ayanla and been like, you know what? That person's going to be better off after being on that show. And so it comes across as if I I don't like her personally. That's not it. I do not appreciate the version that they show for whatever process that she has her guests go through. So let me say that.
It's entertainment.
It's
like,
entertainment.
Right?
Yeah,
no
but
one would watch a Yama if it was a true counseling session. If it was, because a true counseling session is not that exotic and exciting.
yeah. And again, I think you get what you focus on, right? So if you look at her platform, you see how many of her guests come back, and now it's the whole family, right? Is there, and it's just something that's not conducive to success. So as we get close to wrapping up, I did have one question that I promised I was going to ask you, because I've asked everyone else that we've talked about relationships on this show. What do you say to the notion that women have gotten men ready for the next woman?
You know what? I don't. I've heard that.
Yeah.
And I remember there was one time that I said that. I remember thinking to myself and saying, "Hey, listen, I'm not going to put all this time into you so you can go and someone else going to reap the benefit." But yes. I recognize that when I thought, this is just me speaking. So when I thought like that, when when time passed and I was able to assess myself and kind of, go back and say, okay, where were you? I recognized that I was operating from a position of being unhealed myself. And so because I was still dealing from a position of not being healed and, angry over some past relationship that didn't work out, and I was carrying that into a new relationship, so much so that I thought, I'm not feeding anything into you, because in the event this doesn't work out, then nobody else, because that is what had happened previously, right? It's like and so I say this to women. This is, again, why I believe that you have to know your purpose in the relationship to begin with, right? You are not his. When you are dating, your position in that dating relationship is to get information about who he is. You're not there to counsel him. You're not there to be his therapist. You're not there to help him with his business ideas, not at all. Right. You're there to assess what does he bring, what do I bring, can we, now when you're married, that's different. That's different when you're a wife. Most of us don't know the position we play when we're dating somebody. And so we go in with that messed up thinking of, sisters, if you're dating somebody for 2 years, that's the problem. It's not that you're making him better for the next woman. It's that you did not really assess yourself and what it is that you were going to get out of this relationship. If you've been in a relationship for more than 6 months to a year and you don't know where that relationship has the potential of heading, that's the problem. Right. The problem is not, I'm going to make him better for somebody else. You need to understand, how much am I going to give this process? Not how much I'm going to give this person. How much am I going to give to this process? And when I'm in the process, I give 100%. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Yep, I agree. The end. Like, there is no, right now when somebody deals with me, he gets 100%. Now, what does that 100% look like? It doesn't look like 100% for years. There is an expiration date on that, because I recognize I will not give 100% till infinity, but I give enough so that I'm fully committed to it. I'm fully in the process. And if this process doesn't work out, then I fully am able to move on, recognizing that, hey, I'm good with it, because that's part of what this process is about. You're getting to know people. Yeah. But we'd have to have another show on what that looks like, because I believe that there are, I think women, we go too far and then we get angry at the men. And this is where I pull back on us as women and I say, listen, you gave too much and now you're mad, but you had control over that. Right. You went on the long road trip and mad that he didn't pack enough bags to go with you. Those are problems. One of my girlfriends, she used to have this great analogy, and she said, many of us, we're out on a lake, we have everything on this, on this boat, and we're paddling, and then we look on the shore, we see the man that we want, we grab him up, put him in the boat, and we start rowing, and many of us never look back to see that he jumped out the boat. And so we get in the middle of the lake, And we're pissed now because we've been rowing this thing and we thought we had something.
Yeah.
And that's how we treat relationships. You're rowing and you're doing all this work. Stop. Are you matching energy for energy? Is this, are you on the same page? Are you having those conversations, tough conversations that you shouldn't be guessing about where it's going? You should know. And if you cannot discern, how to move in this, again, that's why I say you should not put yourself in a position where you're trying to figure that out. If you didn't have a mother or father, grandparents, aunts, uncles, a good friend, that's when you reach out to somebody professionally. And I'm not just saying a YouTube guru or social media. Get someone who's invested in you, who loves you, who cares about you. I don't subscribe to that whole I'm going to make him better. Here's how I think as a woman. I want the man that comes into my life to be a better man. And if he's 6 months, 6 weeks, and he's better, then that's what I would want. So, and if that means he's better for somebody else, I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
I don't care. Cause what does that do for me? I mean, I just don't sweat the small stuff like that. But I have at one point, I have been that woman where I was like, nah, bruh. But then I was vibrating in low energy and, I wasn't I wasn't in a position to be the best version of myself for somebody. So it's no wonder it didn't work out, right?
Yes.
I look back and I'm like, it didn't work out for other reasons.
Right.
Not just the fact that I was making him better. Like the fact that I even had that mentality should have told me, listen, sister, sit down, you're not ready. Right. So any women, sisters, if you have that mentality, I think that is back to your point earlier in this broadcast. What's the first thing we need to do when we're going to seek out help? Acknowledging it. So if you're thinking like that, that is a sure sign that you're not ready to be in any relationship with anybody.
Yep.
Because if that's where you're coming from, you need to pull out, do yourself a favor, do him a favor. You're not ready. You're not ready.
Totally agree. I think if your goal is to be a wife, you need to study more wives. If your goal is to be a husband, you need to study more husbands so that you can manage your expectations and your growth track accordingly. Mo, it's been awesome to have you on here. I know we could do at least 2 more episodes because we didn't get a chance to talk about the Reparations Act. We didn't get a chance to talk about the politics. Like there's so much. We definitely have to have you back on. In closing, if you were to give 100 women in the Bay Area, 100 women in Atlanta, single women, one word of advice, what would you tell them?
I would tell them, because I did, and I would love to come back and talk about reparations and just our history in this country, because I think that also ties into our relationships and how we engage with one another. But I would tell the women, wherever you are, wherever you're listening to this podcast from, is to recognize one thing, that your power that you bring to your relationships, whether they are interpersonal relationships with each other as women, in your families, as well as when you're engaging with the men. We don't be afraid that when you meet a man and he is not on the standard that you think that he should be on, and then you look for the brothers to help those men to get there. Plant the seed of kindness. Plant the seed that will give that brother something to have on his mind. Don't lead with sexuality all the time and then get mad when men respond to that. But think about the fact that, what do you want to see in the men? Because women, we have a lot of power in that. We can change the demographic of men that each of us are engaging with. If each of us, when we come into contact with our brothers, if we see them and engage with them from a position of recognizing that you may not be the man for me, but my sister over here in Atlanta that's going to come in contact with you, I want you to be better for her. We don't always think like that because, again, we're selfish and we're like, I'm making you better for the next woman. Right. I think in the Black community, we don't always have the luxury of that because our pool of people is small. We're a very small population in America. Sure. And when we look at state by state, we're even smaller, as I said in the top. So yeah, let's deal with one another from a position of patience and grace. And if you meet the brother and he's not, on your list, that doesn't mean he doesn't have value.
Yeah.
Just because he don't check off the boxes on your list. Okay? Deal with him with grace, with love. Treat him like the king that he is, even though he's somebody else's king. And if we all do that, by the time that brother does come into alignment with his queen, and we all do that, many more of us would be dealing with the kinds of men that we would want, because each of us would be planting seeds in our brothers as we're encountering them. So on these dating streets, women, let's come at it from a different perspective. And let's think about, when you're dating this man, that if he don't work out for you, he's going to hook up with somebody else. And so leave him in a better position than you found him.
I love it. I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to the Hawk Vision podcast with the world famous Maureen Simmons.
As they say, who is she?
Right. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe across all your social media platforms. Share this with other visionaries just like you. Date responsibly, take ownership, and remember that where you spend your time is where you will get your results. It's the Hawk Vision Podcast. We will.
Representing East Oakland, man.